So I want you to think about today like a wrecking ball having a conversation with a narrative. The wrecking ball comes in, talks to the narrative, says, hey, narrative, I like you and all, but you know what? You better pack your bags because you're going to be leaving soon. That's what we're going to be looking at today in the statements from one Josh Rickman. Now, who is Josh Rickman, you might ask? Well, this is somebody that's been associated with Johnny Depp for over 3 decades. This is also somebody with a backstage pass, and the stories that he tells you, yeah, the ones about a certain nameless party, you're going to find those fascinating, but the ones about a Io Tillett, right? Ooh, you'll want to hear these today because this stuff, it is beyond magical. So hey there, folks. I hope you're having a fantastic day because today, you and I, we are once again returning to that wonderful, wonderful world of Johnny Depp coverage. And before we get started, could I ask you to share this video, to like it, and to leave comments at the end? Because you know what? This isn't about Hollywood. This isn't about celebrity. This is about something much, much bigger. And this is in preparation for 2021. Now, in order to accurately tell you this, I feel I need to introduce you to certain parties. And the first party I have to introduce you to is when Io Tillett Wright. Now, instead of going into a lengthy explanation of who this person is, I thought I would show you this photograph because I think this thing says it all. This was taken in Coachella, April 2016, after a certain incident you may know is quote-unquote Poopgate. In fact, this person, they're the ones that came up with that name. If you look at here, here's Io Tillett Wright. Here we have the nameless one. We have the nameless one's sister. We have everybody that was involved in a specific narrative. In fact, if you were to take this picture away, there would be no narrative about Johnny Depp because everyone that's involved in it, you see them right here. Doesn't that say something to you on its face? Now, Io Tillett Wright is important in this because they provided a witness statement. You can see the title of it here. I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts. But essentially, it says, hey, that person over there, they're a monster. We're all the good people. We're all the aggrieved. We've never, ever done anything wrong. Now, apologies for just reading excerpts instead of showing you them, but apparently it's okay to read. It's just not okay to showcase certain things. This is about May 21st, 2016. A certain nameless party has phoned up Io Tillett Wright. Why? Because then she said, quote, Johnny believes that you and I together, we're going to say poopied on his pillow on the way to Palm Springs. I was like, what did you say? She started laughing. So do I. It was just so absurd. I laughed and said something like, well, my friend, I wasn't even there, so unless you have poop PS, that's not possible. He had never verbally, let's just say, accosted me before, but my laughing seemed to antagonize him. He said, oh yeah, go ahead and laugh at me, you tricksters together, and got really, well, let's just say, accosting. I said, whoa, bro, hold up, you were my brother until this bleep started. And then he said something like, you're in the bed with my woman. Don't you like sleeping in my bed? I was like, I've slept in your bed many times, with you in it too. Now from there, Io says things escalate. And well, I won't bore you with the details. I'm sure you've heard them all before. But at some time, Io says, I'm still on the phone. I have to call for help. Here, check out my call logs. The only problem with the call logs, of course, it takes an hour. Apparently, a PR firm gets called first. Lawyers get called before that. But hey, you know, I digress. The thing that matters in this is that these people are believable. You know, they're saints here. And well, when they say something, you need to believe it. And when other people say stuff, well, you need to set that aside. But what are other people saying? Now that, it leads us to the declaration of one Josh Rickman. This is interesting because it's a behind-the-scenes look, but it also introduces us to this person here. Again, one of these saints that we've heard about so much, only their saintly actions, yeah, buckle up and check this out. So the declaration of Josh Rickman. Josh Rickman declares as follows. I'm over 18, not a party to this action. I have firsthand personal knowledge of the facts set forth below. I have known and considered Johnny Depp a friend for approximately 33 years. I attended Johnny's wedding ceremony with that certain nameless party in the Bahamas on February the 7th, 2015. It was a small island, and there were a number of wedding attendees. It was quite small. None of the few of Johnny's actual friends who attended were happy Johnny was marrying that nameless party, and we discussed it openly. The general view of his friends, which I shared, although we hardly knew the full details then, were that the nameless party emotionally, let's just say, accosted Johnny, kept him away from his real friends, and was emotionally cruel to him. He always seemed to live in fear of how she would act if he ever tried to break up with her. His family, friends, and I always felt he succumbed to the nameless person's demand that he married her for this reason, among others like it. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of friends have made these statements too, just to say. So continuing, one of the few specific incidents we knew in particular raised my and his friends' concern. We, and certainly I, knew from Johnny that prior to the wedding, that on a night they had an argument, Johnny recounted to me that the nameless one went into the bathroom and came out with Kleenex with red on it, saying he had given her, well, you can imagine what that says from the nose. But after the incident, he retrieved the Kleenex, which he says he still has on this day. The nameless one had placed red nail polish on the Kleenex. It was incidents like this, of which his friends knew only a fraction, that made us concerned for his welfare in this marriage. Anyone who has known Johnny for a long time, or even briefly, would notice that he is uniquely chivalrous, kind, and thoughtful, a person who treats every human being the same, is always helping people, and doesn't like to harm even the feelings of other people. Now here's where we get to Io Tell It Right. I remember that the nameless person, her sister, and friends, they seemed inebriated or drugged out through much of the wedding weekend. The day before the wedding, the nameless person's friend and member of the wedding party, Io Tell It Right, they had accosted another member of the wedding party, Rocky Pennington. Rocky Pennington, by the way, is another of those best friends and another person in that picture, and also another person that happened to be there for the May 21st narrative during an argument about wedding details, and who was essentially going to assume the role of wedding planner and carry out the nameless one's frivolous missives. They were all like a bunch of spoiled children, acting out this charade of a wedding at the expense of Johnny, whom we all knew was more than coerced and shamed into proceeding with the nameless one's demand to be married before Johnny was to depart shortly to film abroad. Most or all of the wedding guests on this tiny island heard about this certain incident here. During the weekend, unlike the rest of the nameless one's friends, I found Io clever and funny and got along well with her/him. After she/he beat up Rocky, a lot of the guests were all hanging out at the bar, and I asked Io what was happening. She/he laughed and said Rocky was being hysterical about wedding planning, crying and carrying on. She/he, that is hard to say over and over again, by the way. You should try it. Say that 3 times fast. She/he offered the facts gladly that she had physically, let's just say, accosted Rocky. Io was laughing and gloating about this incident. I then gave Io a funny nickname backed on the rapper ASAP Rocky. I slap Rocky. Many of the wedding guests and Io's girlfriend called Io I slap Rocky for the rest of the weekend. Io was quite proud of this and seemed to find it hilarious, like a badge of honor. Now, taken on its own, that would be a fascinating little tidbit, but it would also be circumstantial at best. I mean, sure, you would get the mindset of Johnny Depp's friends behind the scenes, but ultimately, it wouldn't really challenge people like Io Tell It Right. Taken with physical evidence, though, things they get interesting, and you see impeachment of character get involved. I mentioned, for example, the gap in call logs. There's an hour there. Well, did you know that Io Tell It Right didn't bother mentioning that at all until they were called on it? Then it becomes, I didn't call for help. What I did is I called someone else. They called for me because I was afraid I'd get caught up in a switchboard. Yeah, interesting stuff. You also have things like this, and I want to end on this item here. You'll notice this is from Instagram. You'll notice 2 things are circled here, and the reason for that is because of date and geotag. See, at one time, Io Tell It was saying, I wasn't just involved in certain things, I was actually there for them. I was there in April 2016. The problem with that is that they had geotagged other posts. You can see this here. And when they were called on it, they said, yeah, you know what? I know how to geotag things. I know how to manipulate those. I was doing that on my own. You don't know what you're talking about. They delete those too. There's evidence of that out there as well. They get called on it. They get mad about it. Like I said, when you start putting this with everything out there that is physical and beyond, you have a fascinating story, and that story, it's going to be front and center in 2021. That's going to be interesting to watch. But anyway, let me know what you think about this stuff. And as always, appreciate your time, appreciate your attention. I appreciate you being here because you make this stuff work. Without you, none of it does. And well, a lot of places are going to figure that out soon. I also want to say, if you like this content, want to support it, there are links in the description. Check those out. Patreon, PayPal, memberships, and of course, our luscious comic book. As always, too, appreciate you being here. Like I say, hope you have a great one. See you soon.